This is a Louie Tee Network exclusive.
For those of you who don't know, I'm Louie Tee, host of the Louie Tee Network, and this is One Burning Question, a series that will take a look at all 32 teams in the National Football League and pose a question. Some teams will have micro questions where we look at the team in its current state and talk about what could potentially happen for them in this season. And some will take a macro approach where we kind of open up the lens a bit and take a step back and look at it from a wide view look and perspective and talk about where these franchises might be going in the future, not just this season, but moving forward. So I'll take a look at each and every single team, ask a burning question, answer that question, and move on to the next team. Thank you for joining me. Enjoy One Burning Question. Welcome to this In the Lab Room exclusive series, One Burning Question. I, of course, as always, am your host, Louie Tee. Thank you for joining me on this program. Today we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks, and their dominance over the NFC has been very, very apparent over the last two seasons, making 2 consecutive trips to the Super Bowl. They're a dangerous team this season, although they probably won't win the NFC West division for the first time in what seems like a long time. This is a team that is so dangerous because of the experience that they have. It doesn't matter what seed they are, 1, 2, 5, 6. Once they get in, because of the experience, because they're battle tested, and because they have the players that know how to get it done with the coaching staff to go along with it, it's a dangerous Seattle Seahawks team. Here's the one burning question for the Seattle Seahawks organization. How long can the Seahawks maintain their level of consistency as far as winning is concerned? The question in the offseason that I had, and I had talked to a couple of colleagues of mine, was that there are a lot of people really bellyaching about money. And again, you'll never hear me tell a player not to go get his money. You know, maybe he does or he doesn't deserve it. That's not up for me to decide. Football is such a physically demanding sport, and it's a very short and small shelf life for these guys to get paid. And so you'll never, ever hear me complain about a guy getting paid money. If he can get $25 million, go get your money, bruh. And so I wasn't upset at any of the Seattle Seahawks. That includes Cam Chancellor for wanting more money, going back to the table and wanting more money, okay? However, at some point, when you're a team like the Seahawks and everyone is getting paid, okay, because they do such a great job, and we've given so much of the credit to the GM and their scouting department for the things that they've done as far as undrafted rookies have been concerned. I mean, they've done a whale of a job of finding the 5th round gem in Richard Sherman. They've done a great job of getting the Malcolm Smiths of the world, a Super Bowl MVP. They've done a great job of going out and getting a guy like Thomas Rawls, an unsung hero this season, and having those guys develop into huge role players for them. You know, Doug Baldwin. These aren't first round picks. These aren't second round picks. These are guys that are getting picked in the 3rd round or later. Russell Wilson, 3rd round selection. And you look at these players and how they impact this team. And the Seahawks are able to keep these guys under contract for 3-4 years at a time at low to minimum wages in the league. And they're able to keep this thing afloat. But when those guys are, and this is the problem they ran into this offseason, is that all of these guys started coming up at the same time for contracts. You paid Earl Thomas, you paid Richard Sherman. You had to let one of your corners go, and probably the one guy you could afford to let go. And so he went off to Philadelphia, did Byron Maxwell, but you wanted to keep your linebackers, and all of them were looking to get paid, and Cam Chancellor wanted more money. You knew you had to pay Russell Wilson, and you did. Marshawn Lynch was holding out, and he was threatening to retire, and so you had to pay him more money, and you started running out of cheese to go around this whole locker room, and you started to say to yourself, I started to think that the fibers of this locker room was being tugged at, and that you started bringing in guys like Jimmy Graham, and he's making $40 million, and you're saying to yourself, you got guys looking around saying, hey, how's he getting $40 million? I've been here busting my ass for 3 years, and I haven't gotten paid yet, but yet this guy's a newcomer, and you're already paying him $40 million. I'm not down with that. And I just watched Richard Sherman get his deal. I just watched Doug Baldwin get his deal. I just watched Earl Thomas get his deal. I just watched Russell Wilson get his cheese and his bread. Where's mine? And so I thought, man, this locker room could be very divisive. And Michael Bennett still wants more money. You know, and it was his fault because he signed the deal. He took the discount to come back and want to be a part of something special. Well, now that everyone else is getting paid, he's like, hey, I deserve more money. Well, you signed the deal, that's your fault. So the Seahawks have done a really good job of keeping this thing together, and at some point their streak of all of these undrafted guys that come in and they hit home runs with and have these players that they draft in the 5th and 6th round, they're going to run out at some point. Because yeah, it's part luck, it's part skill. I mean, it takes a keen eye to be able to identify some of these guys as talented football players that kind of fall through the cracks and go get them, bring them onto your roster, coach them up, and have them be able to contribute for you. But at the end of the day, this is a team now that has a lot of money invested in about 15 to 16 players in that locker room. And so they're going to have to supplement the rest of this play around the guys that they have in this locker room. So I don't know how long they can maintain the level of play, because at some point you're going to have guys that are key contributors that you're not going to be able to pay money to, and you're going to have to start going back to the table and restructuring some deals. There's ways to make the dollars dance. If you have a good cap guy, you can make the numbers dance and say what you need them to say to make guys stay and be able to pay everybody. But it's hard to do in this league, especially with the salary cap. Looks like that salary cap's going to be upped a couple more $1 million in the upcoming offseason, which will help a team like the Seahawks. But my question is, how long can they keep up this dominance? They won't win the NFC West for the first time in about 3 years this season, as the Arizona Cardinals will have that distinction. And I don't think the Cardinals are going away anytime soon. The 49ers, they're at a low point right now, but eventually you have to think they'll be back if they can get their front office situation under control. The St. Louis Rams, they've been sniffing around for a while. You really don't know what those guys are, but for Seattle's sake, so you're not winning the division anymore, okay? That's a little bit of a shock, okay? Not that anyone is surprised, because they shouldn't have won the division last year. If Carson Palmer doesn't go down, they don't win the division last season. But that aside, now that you're no longer a division winner, now that you can't rely on home field advantage to get you through the postseason, how's this team going to fare once the postseason does get underway? And we know this team, again, battle-tested. They can go on the road. But the reason why they've been so dominant over the last couple of seasons in the playoffs is because everyone had to come to Seattle to get to the Super Bowl through the NFC, and it's just been all but impossible to do so. It's going to be a different story next season. We're going to see, or this postseason, I should say. And it's going to be interesting to see if the Seattle Seahawks can take the show on the road and show us the grit and the mettle that they have gained over the last 2 postseasons, and see if they can't take that show on the road and get it done. Going to need some healthy bodies at the running back position. Going to need to be able to play the type of defense they played over the last month of the season or so to be able to get back to that level where they were able to get to the Super Bowl for the last 2 seasons. But at the end of the day, for this Seattle Seahawks team, the one burning question, and I'm going to ask it once more, how long can the Seahawks maintain their level of consistency as far as winning is concerned? I don't know how long they can keep this charade up. Is it even a charade? I don't know. Because now you're not the division champs anymore. And, I mean, they got off to a rough start. You're not winning at home as much anymore. You're not as dominant at home. And maybe you were just struggling earlier in the season. No Cam Chancellor. And you had Kerry Williams out there struggling at the cornerback position. And Russell Wilson was still trying to figure out how to get into a rhythm with Jimmy Graham in the offense and Marshawn Lynch in and out of the lineup. So maybe they weren't able to get into a rhythm. I don't know what the answer is to that question, but as far as this one burning question is concerned, that's the most important question for this Seattle Seahawks franchise, because as long as you're able to keep the core guys together, and you've been able to do that thus far, and keeping that core group together is, to me, what's going to keep this car moving and this engine running at a relatively high level. But how long can these guys play at a really high level together on the same page without people griping over money and having struggles, with injuries and things of that nature? Because again, your frontline players are going to be exceptional, but the depth is going to be tested if you have injuries. Just like right now, your running back position is going to be tested. And I think it's going to hurt this Seahawks team down the stretch, because you don't have a lot of money to go out and get other guys. Okay, so you have to draft well. You have to hit home runs in the draft. You have to have great free agent signees in the form of undrafted rookies or in free agency in general, because so much money is tied up into those frontline guys. There's not going to be a lot of depth behind them that you can trust. So we're going to see how long the Seahawks can maintain this level of consistency, because it's the likes of which we haven't seen in this league. From an NFC standpoint, we've seen the Patriots and what they've been able to do, and that's unprecedented. You don't see that in the league very often. Tom Brady's a huge part of what they've been able to do, but they've been able to find a way to keep that team afloat despite, the guys coming in and out of the locker room at various positions. They had the one constant at the quarterback position. You feel like you had that in Seattle with Russell Wilson. You have some defensive talent in Seattle. You feel like you have enough parts to continue keeping this run going. But for how long can you keep this up is the question. You're no longer a number one seed. You're no longer winning the division. There's steps to this now, and you're starting each and every single year. You're seeing another brick being knocked out of that foundation. So now you're no longer the number one seed. Now you're no longer getting home field advantage in the playoffs. Now you're no longer winning the NFC West. Now you're just getting in as another team. We'll see how the Seattle Seahawks fare in that role, and if they're able to continue winning next season and beyond with this core group. That's the Seattle Seahawks. One burning question. I'm your host, Louie Tee. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.